Welcome, everybody. We appreciate you being here. Really excited about today's presentation and webinar. It's actually the first episode in what we're calling a demo series, where it's definitely going to be demo focused. Today, being an intro to Redis, we're going to go through a lot of basics. And a lot of the basics can't really demo too well, but I'm going to try to share diagrams and pictures that will help kind of, put the nail into some concepts. And then at the end, well, we'll go through this in the agenda, but at the end, we'll definitely demo some different things in Redis, and especially the different products and so forth. So it looks like, yeah, we got quite a few people still joining in, but let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, my name is Talon Miller. I do technical marketing here at Redis, and I've been here for about 3 years. But I think the first thing we'd like to do is just get an idea of, who our audience is today. Let us know um, how you are using Redis today. Um, and yeah, I can also tailor some of my questions and answers for you today based off of today's answers as well. So yeah, let me know how you're using Redis today. Looks like a lot of caching and session management, which is great. Very, very common use cases, of course. And looks like we've got quite a few people using it for vector and RAG as well. So really cool. We'll let that stay open for about another 30 seconds. Appreciate your participation. It certainly just helps me understand who's in our audience today. Yeah, wow. Got a variety through all of the answers here. So it's actually pretty spread, which is really cool. Got some experienced users on today. Awesome. Well, we appreciate your participation. We'll go ahead and close that poll and we'll get started. So like I said, I do technical marketing at Redis. I've been at Redis for about 3 years now. I do not have a marketing background. I have a technical background. I used to work at Oracle, so I'm very familiar with the Oracle space. I worked on Oracle DB, and it was also at Oracle when Oracle Cloud launched. So that was a cool time. I worked at a company called Domo. It's a business intelligence company. Most people haven't heard of it, even though I think it's an amazing platform. If you have, let me know if chat works. I did implementation for them and also solution architecting, so kind of like a pre-sales and also post-sales job there. So and then Redis called and said, "Hey, come talk about our product." So that's now what I do, and I love it. So a little background about me. Let's go ahead and get into the agenda. So today's agenda is all about the intro to Redis. We're going to talk about what Redis is. We're going to go over the different versions of Redis, like source available and Redis Stack. We're going to go over Redis Enterprise and its capabilities. We're going to go over some use cases and customer stories. And then, like I said in the beginning, if you missed it, I was kind of talking to everybody here before we started. We'll definitely be demoing some things today. We'll be demoing Redis Cloud, Redis Software, and Redis Insight. And if you don't know what those are, don't worry. We will definitely be going over in those in the webinar today. So by the time we demo it, you should be very familiar with what they are. So let's go ahead and let's go over the definition of Redis, right? So if you Googled Redis or ChatGPT Redis, this is probably very, very close to what it's going to come up to be. Redis is an in-memory data store that is used as a database, cache, message broker, and much more. It's known for its speed, simplicity, and diverse amount of data types. And you might be wondering, well, speed makes sense. Well, what about simplicity? What does that even mean? Or data types? We're going to get into that. Before we go any further into maybe some of the data types and other things, I wanted to first, I think it makes sense to show or see how it works in the real world, right? In real life. This is probably the most common way to use Redis as a cache, which is called cache aside. Cache aside is an excellent choice for read-heavy applications when cache misses are acceptable. The application handles all data operations when you use a cache aside pattern, and it directly communicates with both the cache and the database. So it's very good for offloading what needs to be fast to Redis, right? So let's talk about source available Redis, or what was previously known as open source Redis. Source available Redis is a top rated in-memory data structure store. Being in memory, it is super fast because it doesn't need to execute you know, slow reads and writes to disk. Um, it's free to download, install, and operate as is conditioned. The free download and operation is the reason why Redis is so popular, is you could just download and install, and it just works free of charge, right? We've heard so many times here at Redis, whether that's our community or our customers, it just works. Developers commonly say it's like just something that like I don't have to debug. It's something I don't have to configure to get it working with the rest of my stack. And if you are familiar with Redis, I'm sure you can agree. Whoever uses the source available version of Redis is responsible for its operation and maintenance. So it's free, as in, you're getting a free puppy, right? And one of the biggest misconceptions of, previously named open source Redis is that it is free. What I mean is, yes, it's free to download, but it takes a lot of money to maintain, manage, and develop source available. In fact, many companies using this version of Redis come to us for our enterprise offerings, meaning Redis, the company, because their spend was way too high on open source, just developing and maintaining it. Because of these things, Redis as a service, you don't have to have a whole team managing it, continuously upsizing and downsizing of the nodes and throughput. So yeah, that's a very common thing for a lot of our customers for enterprise is actually coming from or the evolution of open source or source available to an enterprise offering. And I feel like that's a very common, path for most people, in tech or like, okay, I'm going to start my concept or my proof of concept, my testing on open source software. But eventually it's like, okay, but do we want to, have a team dedicated to building on features and updating and, and so forth. So source available Redis provides robust data retrieval and manipulative, features, including support for various data types like strings, lists, sets, and hashes, and is known for its exceptional speed and versatility as a database solution for a diverse amount of applications. It encourages community contributions, fostering continuous improvements and innovation within the Redis ecosystem, which means a very strong community of champions and advocates in every industry, which has been really cool to be a part. There's a long list of companies who use and deploy source available Redis as part of their tech stack. For example, Uber, Stack Overflow, Instacart, Coinbase, Instagram, GitHub, Airbnb, and many more. So we talked a lot about, or at least I mentioned data types a lot. And I think this graph or this image is amazing. I think even if you are a Redis expert, you use Redis a lot, this is super helpful for, first of all, it's like, how do we store different variables in Redis? What does that look like? And then also, if I do, want to use a hash or a string or a list, what is it typically good for? Um, and I feel like, my background's more in data engineering, not so much software engineering. So for me, this is a great way because I'm used to like traditional databases where there's relationships, and I'm very, very interested to see how the data is stored. So for me, this is a very helpful slide, and hopefully it is for you too. Go ahead and grab a screenshot of it if you need to. Definitely one of my favorites. So let's go into source available Redis on top of what we call Redis Stack, which provides these tools for developers to build advanced applications and monitor their data in non-intrusive ways. Redis Stack is essentially source available Redis plus advanced types, data types, and data processing engines. So with it, developers can start working on their applications right away. Without it, developers would have to create their own, right? Which you can imagine is difficult and time consuming. Um, let's take a look, or at least a closer look at these advanced data structures on the next slide. So here are the advanced data structures that are included in Redis Stack and Redis Enterprise, which are not available on source available Redis. So you've got document search, which is obviously very, very common. I think obviously a document store using JSON is a given. It's like very popular to store in JSON nowadays. But to search on top of it, I feel like that's a very big differentiator for Redis Enterprise over other offerings, is being able to search on top of that. For popular use cases like document catalog, documents, real-time analytics, and master data tables. Then we got Vector, which is really awesome. I mean, I'm sure you've been to quite a few AI webinars or presentations in the last year. What's cool about Vector with Redis is that we've actually been storing vectors in Redis for nearly 3 years now. So well before ChatGPT, um, we've actually had many customers in production using Vector, for multiple years, which is why Redis is being looked at as a leader for a vector database, just because we've been doing it for a while. It's not just been the last year or two with all the hype, um, which is also why AWS has chosen Redis as one of three vector databases supported on Bedrock. So if you've seen that, we are one of three available vector databases there. And then there's time series, which I absolutely love. Whenever I spin up my own deployments, I always have time series because coming from a business intelligence background, I always want to have real-time analytics on top of either my app or my database. Um, so yeah, this is obviously for timestamp data, which is great to have in Redis, so you can have that instant analysis. And then probabilistic, which gives you different filters and calculation type data types to help you do advanced things like authentication, trending items, stock price tracking, and so forth. There's a lot of advanced use cases there, a lot of variety of options there. So it's kind of hard to generalize in just one image. But another advanced data structure available in Redis Stack and Redis Enterprise. So let's talk about Redis Enterprise, which is our paid commercial offering at Redis, which extends the capabilities of source available Redis and providing advanced features like geo distribution, automated scaling, and high availability for clustering and for mission critical applications. These advanced capabilities, coupled with dedicated Redis support and Redis grade security features, cover the demands of large scale production environments, providing up to 5 nines of availability with sub-millisecond response time and predictable TCO. So obviously that was a ton of just jargon. We're going to dive into each of those and discuss what that means and why it's important and how our customers are using it today. So many companies discover the power of Redis via the source available version, like I've said. It's taught in every computer science class, right? And as they grow, they implement additional capabilities according to the demand of their applications in order to scale and support more operations per second, or an additional feature that either their engineers are requiring on inside the company or their users are expecting on the outside, right? On their application. When developers add their own features to source available Redis, they have to figure out how to build it and maintain it completely on their own. This diverts resources from building their applications to supporting a hefty source available project. Redis Enterprise combats these challenges, making it easy for architects and IT managers to offer enterprise-grade capabilities to their products, which require the speed and support of those who actually created and know Redis like the back of our hands. We already mentioned Redis Enterprise comes in, a form of two commercial offerings, software and cloud. Let's look at the differences between the two and discuss, why one would make sense for, one use case over another. So first, it's important to know that Redis Enterprise provides flexible deployment architecture. What does flexible deployment architecture mean? Redis Enterprise allows for the ability to deploy applications in any infrastructure, providing organizations with the flexibility to adapt their data platform to any deployment strategy according to their infrastructure needs. There are three different deployment architectures for Redis Enterprise. So it's software or on-prem, Redis on Kubernetes, and the cloud. We'll start by looking at Redis software. Redis software is the traditional way companies install software, which is on-prem or on their own machines. Redis provides the binaries or installation files, and customers install the software at their convenience with the freedom to select the hardware and infrastructure it will run on. And with Redis Enterprise, the software download options include either installation on any bare metal machine, which means kind of in-house their own machines, or installation on any virtual machine provided by any public cloud company like or CSP like AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure. In both cases, it's important to make sure that the hardware, is used meets the required minimum specifications, of course. Whichever route the company decides to go, it's important to note that Redis software is self-managed, where the customer is responsible for maintaining the infrastructure unless Redis support is purchased, right? Which is normally always the case. When people come to Redis Enterprise, they expect the Redis experts to be there to help. So Redis support, our team's amazing, and yeah, our customers love our support as well. In case of any organization choosing the bare metal server option, they simply download the install Redis Enterprise software on their hardware, and if they choose this option, they can do so based on the support for Kubernetes. And I've talked a lot about Kubernetes at other presentations and everything else. I love Kubernetes. I've got a lot of Kubernetes in my background, and I can tell you that running what was used to be known open source Redis or source available Redis on a Kubernetes is very difficult. It's very difficult to do, but there's still a lot of people who, they're a Kubernetes shop and they want to put everything they can in containerization, and so they put Redis there. What I will say is that, you know, Redis Enterprise does have a Kubernetes operator, which is a tool that was developed to help the deployment and administration of Redis in these types of Kubernetes-based, deployments. This includes a cloud managed Kubernetes services from, GKS, AKS, and EKS, which are the Kubernetes services on the cloud services or the CSPs. So let's jump into Redis Cloud, which is fully managed. And using the experience of hundreds of thousands of deployments, we have simplified the way customers acquire and use Redis in the cloud. Redis Cloud provides the same capabilities as Redis Enterprise software, but with added features such as, an API and support for the largest public cloud providers, like AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. We can get deployed as a database as a service. Customers can select from different levels of functionality, whether it's fixed, kind of like a monthly, pay $5 a month, or annual, so you get like a bigger discount. This is very, very traditional in software. And pay as you go payments, without needing to, have any knowledge related to hardware or infrastructure, which is great. Redis Cloud is the easiest and most effective way to deploy Redis Enterprise and works perfectly for any use case needing Redis, but with the flexibility that a database as a service provides. We make sure to deploy all of our enterprise capabilities in a coordinated manner from source available to software, Kubernetes, and cloud. So we make sure that software and cloud and source available are all on the same version. When we do come out with let's say an 8.0, we're going to make sure that we do a sim ship, which means we're going to simultaneously ship all features and updates, which is a huge lift, as you can imagine. But we want the experience to be the same no matter where our customers are using Redis. So why Redis the company? That might be a question because there's other enterprise level, or at least Redis as a service options out there, like Elasticache. And to be frank, we do see, Elasticache and Memory Store as, basic offerings of what source available or open source is. So let's check out these different enterprise capabilities that Redis Enterprise has that these other services don't. So first, we have two enterprise grade tools that our customers love and also officially supported client libraries, which I'll get into in just a minute. So like I said, we're going to be demoing Redis Insight, which will be really cool. It's a GUI for Redis that can do much more than you know. I think whenever I show Redis Insight to people, either in person or online, they're amazed at oh, I didn't realize it could do that. So we'll go over that. It's a great way to interact with your data without having to write code. And the full featured tool provides ways to browse, filter, visualize, and display data, giving developers a better understanding of their data in one central location. It contains controls to search data leveraging our Redis query engine. It provides an advanced a CLI to allow developers to work with commands more efficiently. It includes a database analysis tool to optimize the database in use with contextualized database recommendations for DevOps and architects teams. It gives developers diagnostic tools to help develop applications faster. And it comes with built-in interactive tutorials that allow developers to discover new Redis capabilities that could enhance their experience and productivity even more with things like Copilot. So lots to go over. I'll try to remember all of those things as when I actually share my screen and show Redis Inside Off. But yeah, lots of things there. And then we have Redis Data Integration, or RDI for short. RDI is a tool that runs inside of Redis Enterprise. It helps developers and architects synchronize existing databases with Redis Enterprise to mirror application data. Now, this is something that is a big challenge for people who are trying to use Redis as a service, or even Redis in general outside of Redis Enterprise. Being able to mirror application data in Elasticache or memory store is very difficult. Doing it in source available is definitely a hack job. You have to build it your own. So this tool has become a very, very popular tool for us for that reason. And coming from a data engineering background, it makes a lot of sense. Integration and data syncing is very, very important for nowadays with, microservices based architectures becoming so popular. And well, anyways, before I go off on that, so RDI can help essentially speed up slow databases without replacing them, right? So we can mirror application data in real time without writing new code too. It's no code. It's all about transforming the slow data into real-time data, which can apply to just about any use case out there or business vertical out there. So we've got this in production use just about everywhere you can think. Organizations will want this now because this type of capability, like I said, does not exist in source available or of the other, Redis as a service offerings out there as well. And finally, something really cool for developers is, and this is relatively new, I think within the last 8 months, Redis supports, dozens, if not close to 50 plus client libraries, which is, if you don't know, if you're not familiar, is a programming tool to make it easier for developers to write code that interfaces with servers. But even better than supporting dozens is that Redis, the company, officially supports 6 different client libraries so that we can offer more support through fixing bugs and addressing potential security issues as fast as possible. And also, I think what makes the most sense too, kind of similar to our sim ship ideology, is that by supporting or by officially supporting 6 different client libraries, we can guarantee consistent support for features and customer support across these different client libraries. And these 6 officially client libraries are .NET, Redis, which is a Java-based client library, Python, Node.js, Go, and Redis, which is another Java-based library. So let's go over a couple of enterprise-grade features and the definitions and why they're important before we jump into the demos. So these are the primary reasons why, besides TCO or cost, that a customer would want to come to Redis Enterprise over using the open source or source available Redis, or something like Elasticache, which is, using the latest version of open source 7.2.4, which is going to have basic functionality. So, and I guess this also plays into the fact of the buy versus build conversation, right? Whether an organization is wanting to build from the ground up or buy. Building features on top of source code is very expensive because it takes a lot of team members or overhead to build, maintain, and manage. And also, like I said, a lot of these things, the cloud providers aren't simply, they don't have Redis teams dedicated to build these types of features either. So historically, they've just taken the most recent version of Redis and applied it to their own services. But now with the licensing change, they're not going to be able to do that, which is, they're going to have the latest version of Redis, which is 7.2.4, which is great. We came out with that, I think, about 8 months ago. But let's go ahead and get into the definitions before we get into the weeds. So hyperscale architecture, what does that even mean? It's our ability as Redis, the company, to help our customers scale up to the highest demand or throughput on the market. So if you do need millions and millions of operations a second, we do have the highest amount of throughput on the market. The ability to scale across the world, which we'll touch on in just a second on active-active, which is the next point, and resilience and security to scale without diminished performance, and the ability to scale cost effectively and efficiently. So active-active, I love to talk about this topic, and I couple active-active together with five nines of high availability because they kind of go in tandem, and I'll tell you why. First, active-active is the ability to replicate data between regions or geographically distributed regions. When you set this up, it can take a lot of time, but we have ways to automate it now, which is really cool. But when you set this type of architecture up, that's how you get the five nines of high availability, which is by far the highest amount of uptime on the market. With Elasticache, you get four nines of high availability, which is about 5 minutes of downtime per month. And with Google Memory Store, you only get three nines of uptime, which is an abysmal 45 minutes of downtime per month, which is kind of crazy to think about. With five nines of high availability, you are guaranteed to have less than 26 seconds of downtime per month, which is why critical use cases choose Redis, the company, like all of the major banks, financial institutions, healthcare, and so on. So let's go on to robust durability. If you're familiar with Redis, then you know Redis has two main types of persistence: append-only file, or AOF, and RDB, also known as snapshotting. What you probably don't know is that Elasticache or Google Memory Store can't support AOF, which writes all operations performed by Redis to disk, which is by far the best way to control the loss of data, which is pretty interesting. Let's go into auto tiering. This is a really cool capability for applications that need real-time processing on large amounts of data and have a difficult challenge of balancing performance and cost. There's a lot of people that I talked to. I just went to Google Next. There's a lot of customers who are like, I wish I could put everything in Redis, right? But it's RAM, it's finite, it's expensive. Well, that's where auto tiering comes in. A high-performance storage engine for Redis Enterprise that enables large volume data sets to grow beyond the limits of RAM by using solid-state drives, or SSDs for short, and also known as flash memory as part of the Redis key space. And it's no code and automated, which is super awesome. And if you haven't recently seen, we recently acquired the company SpeedDB, which was at the forefront of developing solid state drives for use as a data store. So we're going to be continuing to make many, many enhancements and improvements on auto tiering. I'm looking forward to that. That's what kind of makes me excited about my day to day coming to work for Redis, is seeing what's new with auto tiering and SpeedDB. And then we have multi-tenancy. This is another huge benefit that doesn't exist in the source available version of Redis, nor the other Redis as a service offerings out there. Simply put, multi-tenancy provides a flexible and efficient way to get the most out of your infrastructure. With multi-tenancy in Redis Enterprise, you can host multiple Redis databases in a Redis cluster while maintaining logical resource isolation and efficiency. Essentially, simply put, you can do more with less with the way that we've set up the infrastructure of how we can do databases for the clusters. And then, being an enterprise-grade version of Redis, we also have best-in-class security for Redis because of our support for things like role-based access control, or RBAC, LDAPs, PCI DSS certifications, internode encryption, and the latest version of TLS, SOC 2 compliance, GDPR compliance, private sector security with STIGs, and so on. So lots of security, of course, too. So let's move on, shall we? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. I accidentally moved my screen a little bit. So let's move on to some use cases that you should know about. Like I said, Redis can do more than you know. Thousands of Redis enterprise customers use Redis for things like instant fraud detection that keeps banks and consumers a step away, ahead of criminals, and to deliver responsive online gaming leaderboards at massive scales. You should see some of our customer stories of these gaming companies. For example, we've a couple in India where they're gaining millions of new users a month. How do you handle that scale? That is scary. It's a daunting thought for me to think about owning an app where you're getting millions of new users a month. And then add the power of the next generation AI and ML applications using Redis Enterprise as a vector database. Just a few examples of other use cases that you may not be familiar with that Redis is excellent for. So let's go ahead and jump into the demo and feel free to chat. I'd be happy to answer any questions as we're going through this. I'm going to be kind of ad hocing this demo for Redis Cloud software and the Redis Insight. So if you have any questions while I'm on demoing it, please let me know. I'd be happy to kind of answer your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment. And then, oh, you know what? Actually, we actually have a Redis Cloud console open right here. So let me just stop sharing so I can authenticate once again. And then we'll get right going again. Let's see. Log in. All right, we're in. Let me share my screen again. Awesome. For those who haven't seen Redis Cloud before, this is Redis Cloud. You'll probably first notice the purple banner at the very top. I just enabled my $500 marketplace trial actually, because I was building a SageMaker um, fraud detection video, and I integrated my Redis Cloud with AWS. So that's why that's there. That's not typically there unless you set up Redis Enterprise through the AWS marketplace. But anyways, um, I only have one demo database here at the moment using Redis Stack. It's very small. But why don't we go through at least building a new database together? This process is actually new as of a couple of weeks ago. So before, it was very much like it guided you through maybe steps that maybe not everybody would be familiar with. So now we're trying to walk users through, starting to build a database based on use cases, right? So let's say I would need Redis for cache. It might enable some features in the backend that would help for this use case. But our intention isn't just to like lump in things that you wouldn't need. The price doesn't change based off of features. So, but even if you were worried about that, you can also do custom and build it your own too. So, anyways, we've also renamed our plans to Essentials and Pro. Essentials are basically our fixed, a monthly based charge. And then Pro is our capacity based charge, which is, pay by how much you use. We'll go ahead and use Essentials. It's going to give us a very basic database name just to get us through the process a little easier. We can select our cloud vendor. So let's say I had all of my infrastructure and VMs and everything else set up in Azure. I could select Azure and easily, um, tunnel into Azure and connect my Redis Enterprise or Redis Cloud database to that infrastructure or that environment. Then you've got high availability settings here, like if we need multi-zone or single zone. And then we can choose some different persistence options as well. And then we will use Redis Stack, which, like I said, has all of the data types that you're familiar with Redis, with in addition the advanced data types. And then you can choose, different sizing to pace, depending on what you need. I'm just gonna go with 250 because I want to tear this down as soon as our webinar is over. I'll get pinged from our DevOps people, confirm and pay. And then it takes just a moment to get stood up. So while this is getting stood up, I guess what I'll do is I'll go over some things that you can do inside of the console itself, which is really, really nice for those who are used to using, Redis in the CLI, or, Redis, in other ways. So we've got data access control. I don't have anything set up here, but you can set up basically rules for accessing different data, right? So we can say um, like cluster manager, right? And then we can set up different roles. And obviously, if you are familiar with Redis open source or Redis source available, you'll be familiar with ACLs or access control lists. You can upload your own access control list too, if that's the way if you want to do things. But then, of course, what's really cool is you can actually select what database you want this role to be attained to, if you want to do that or not. Let's go over into access management, which is, of course, getting access into the Redis cloud environment or the Redis databases. Of course, you can add in team members manually, um, or you can use API keys, of course. And then we also have single sign-on. So, and then you get logs for what's going on, which of course is helpful. Here I am doing things in here. Looks like my database is active now. And then, we don't need to get into account settings, usage, or billing, but that's certainly there for you. Let's go back into our database and let's see what we can kind of control from here. So we've got one single endpoint for our database, which is really great. The whole point, I think, personally, of using Redis as a service is I don't want to have to think about the clustering. I don't want to have to think about the nodes. Just give me my database. So that's exactly what we do. We'll do all of the clustering and node management in the back end. And so you can use a single endpoint. There's no code changes where something changes. You don't need to change the endpoint. This endpoint will always work for you, which is great. We've got our advanced capabilities or our data types. We've got our scalability or our throughput kind of metrics here. And then I didn't set up any durability, but then you can also set up some different alerts for, if you want someone to be notified if the latency is over a certain threshold. And then, yeah, there's a couple more things you can do when you edit it, but we'll kind of leave it at that. We'll see if we have any questions. No questions at the moment. But yeah, let me know if there's anything here that you'd like me to cover on Redis Cloud before we move on to Redis Software, which, like I said, is our on-prem version. Something I do like to point out too is this connect point, this connect button here, which is really cool. So this will automatically open up Redis Insight on your desktop if you have it downloaded. But also, if you want to connect to the CLI, it gives you an automatic, string to copy to get into the CLI or a client. So let's say you're using Node.js or you're using Python. Here's your one bit of code that will get you into there. So yeah, so that's great. Let's go ahead and move on to Redis Software. I'm going to stop sharing really quick once again, just to authenticate into Redis Software. And let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to engage with any of you and go over any questions you may have. We'll go ahead and share my screen once again. That's funny. Whenever we share a screen on Zoom, we just have to say that out loud. So very familiar looking to Redis Cloud. That's obviously was the intention. We want them to be a consistent experience. But now, because Redis Software is a self-managed approach, we now have to manage the cluster and nodes, which is, the goal for most people who are actually using it on-prem, right? You have different security, regulations or requirements that makes it so that you have to use on-prem or whatever. So now we're looking at our cluster page or cluster tab, and we can see our different metrics. I just spun this up, so the databases itself aren't being used, but we've got our available metrics here of how many gigabytes were being used. I did enable Flash on this, which is our, like I said, auto tiering. So I'll go over that in just a moment. We've got our versioning, we've got our licenses, and so forth. And then we've got different security things you can set up as well on top of the cluster. Some different logs, right? Some different metrics. Like I said, it's not really going to show much here because I just set this up and I don't have a database running, but it's here for some of the basic metrics. You don't have to open up Datadog or something else. It's all here if you need to. But of course, like I'm a huge Datadog fan. It's there when you need a little bit deeper look. Logs and then modules. You might be wondering, well, why do we need to show these different data types or modules here? This is really, really great for if you have different databases on different versions. So for example, if you've been on Redis software for a couple of years, one of your first databases that you're running in production may be on a previous version of Redis JSON or a JSON support. And it'll show you here that, it's on 6.0 versus 7.1, whatever. This is a great place for that. Then we've got our nodes. We can take a look at different metrics for our nodes. Same kind of thing. And then, what's our primary versus secondary versus the IP addresses, and then databases. So let's go ahead and create a database. Something I really love about software is that you can, with one click, decide whether you need a single region or active-active database. And like I said, setting up active-active can be a pain. Um, but we've made it really easy on software to do it. So I'm going to create an active-active database. It's going to ask me to authenticate with a user that has the permissions to build an active-active database. And then it's going to give us all of our authentication details, right? We can choose to create this database on RAM or Flash. Since we're here and I haven't really shown you Flash yet, let's just go over it now. So the way auto tiering works is really cool. So um, if you saw, if when we enable Flash, it gives us this bar over here, right? So let's say I'm going to give this database 10 gigabytes of memory, and I want the threshold to be at, let's say, 25%. So what's going to happen is that um, once we hit about 2.5 gigabytes of memory in RAM of hot values or actively used values, that's going to be in RAM, but then everything else, so the 7.5 is all going to be in Flash, which of course is going to be a lot more cost effective and still fast. It's going to keep it warm but not hot. So yeah, it happens automatically. It's going to determine whether a value needs to be kind of promoted or demoted depending on its usage, if it's being required or not. It's as simple as that. There's literally nothing else that you need to do. No other configuration, no code, which is really cool. This is new, actually. This is a new update as of the last week or two, where we can actually select different database versions depending on, different versioning that you need to, um, you know, something needs to be compatible with something else you're using in your stack. Um, and then you can obviously set up TLS. Replication obviously is going to be on for us because we're making an active-active database, which is, replicating data across regions. We can set up different persistence. We'll go ahead and append a file. And then they do expose, this is something that wasn't available before in our previous software UI, but we do expose sharding now. So you can, if you want to, you can decide to have more shards than what's typically set up for a normal cluster. And then access control and internode encryption. So there's just some basics there. We'll go ahead and leave this. But anyways, hopefully that gave you an idea of, the differences between Redis Cloud and Redis software. If you have any questions, let me know. And then the last thing we'll do before we get on to the end here is demo Redis Insight. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'll pull up Redis Insight. So you should be seeing Redis Insight now. I'm actually connected to a Redis Cloud database. This is like our key manager space where we're looking at all the keys that exist inside of my Redis database. As you can see, I preloaded some data for us. But what's cool is you can open up any key and see how it's stored, what's on that key space. You can bulk upload data, bulk delete keys. You can even add a key manually, right? So let's name this key demo, and that's going to be May, and then first, or yeah, May. Today's May 1st. We'll add that key. You can, I mean, obviously that no one wants to add keys manually like that, but if you do need to test certain things with different values, certainly can. Let's go into the workbench. The workbench is essentially an advanced CLI that helps you build inside of Redis or interact with your Redis database without having to, go through like a terminal. And we also have a way to help you with commands as well, and I'll show you that. We also have an analysis tool. to essentially build reports based off of slow logs and also real-time logs on what's happening with your database. You can also set up pub sub or publish subscribe. So like kind of like Redis streaming through Redis Insight as well, which is really cool. And then we can also pull up the CLI right here, right? We can like set and let's say set demo today, get demo, right? So, and then the profiler is really cool too. We'll go ahead and close the CLI. So this is a little bit more obvious for you guys. The profiler is a real-time tool for executing or showing you what commands are being executed on your Redis database. Because we're using Redis Insight, as you can see, the only commands that are happening right now are info, which is allowing us to see all of the different metrics and everything on Redis Insight. But of course, if you were actually using your database, you'd see a lot more happening here. Command helper is awesome. So if you want to see like, okay, well, what do I need to have for set? And there's obviously a ton of different kind of commands with set in it. That probably wasn't the greatest example, but a really good repository here of information for those who are trying to learn and use Redis commands. Speaking of learning, something I love is the insights section here. So we have built tutorials for you to interact with and learn Redis, which is really awesome. So let's go ahead and do vector search explained, vector search basics. It's going to walk you through some text, but then there's actually some code for you to interact with and run and copy and manipulate, which is awesome. Like being able to do this inside of your own tool on desktop, interacting with your own database, which I think is really awesome. At least I do. Um, and then another thing that's also new, and you may not see this on your Redis Insight. Um, let's see if I can find it. Um, hmm, let's go back here. Maybe I'm missing it out too. Yeah, but Copilot. So I was going to show you Copilot. Copilot's going to be coming very soon, which is actually really awesome. If you're a developer, I'm sure you already love Copilot. But the reason why it's prevalent for me, I guess, as more of a data engineer, is I'm very comfortable writing SQL, right? I can write SQL for days, but writing the right command for Redis to do something similar is, for me, at least me personally, it might be a little difficult. So Copilot in Redis Insight for Redis is really great for like, hey, I have a SQL command that is doing a select with an aggregation for this. Give me the equivalent command in Redis, and it's going to pop out that command, which is really great. I wish I could show that to you today, but anyways, hopefully that gave you a little bit of an insight to Redis Insight. And with that, I think what we'll do, well, it looks like we have a chat here. Yes, there will be a recording. Yeah, so bottom left GitHub icon. You will probably won't be able to see this. You're probably still seeing the Redis Insight. But what it's done is it's opened up the GitHub page to Redis Insight, which you can fork off and everything else too. So yeah, thanks for your question. Yeah, Redis Insight repository is what it's given me a description of. So yeah, with that, no, yeah, no, it wasn't Copilot. Copilot should be in Insights. You should be seeing that by the end of May if you have Redis Insight downloaded. I swear I have the most recent version. I swear it was here this morning. Maybe I'm missing it. Man, that's okay. What we'll do is I'll stop sharing Redis Insight and we'll go back to the my screen here. Or let's see here. Sorry, give me 1 second here, everybody. Get the slide deck back up. There she is. Okay. And we'll end here. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed time and kind of the stuff that we've gone over today. We'll do a closing poll really quick before we end, and we'll also open it up to a live Q&A as well. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. I realize we went through a lot. We definitely could spend a lot more time on any of the things that we talked about today. I'd be happy to go deeper. Um, if not, then we'll move on to the next thing in our day. But I will mention that we this is a demo series. Being a series, there should be something next, right? Um, in about 2 weeks. So I think we're having a demo webinar like we are today every 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have our second episode, and that's going to be on Gen AI. So if you are curious on using Redis as a vector database, that's going to be the perfect episode for that. I'm sure they're going to get far more into the weeds than we did today. Being an intro episode, I just wanted to do high level on lots of topics. Hopefully that worked for you. But yeah, feel free to ask me any questions in chat. We can go over that. But yeah, thanks for joining today, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed the demo, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks for the Gen AI episode